One thing we can all agree on is that compared to Britain, we really are yet again the lucky country. The COVID situation in the UK is dire. Indeed, Britain is now looking like remaining in a paralysing lockdown all through this bleak British winter right through to Easter and possibly beyond. Joining me now is Toby Young, a wonderful writer who worked with Boris Johnson at The Spectator and is a gallant and fearless fighter for free speech and freedom and conservative values. Toby set up the Lockdown Skeptics website, which I urge you to visit on lockdownskeptics.org. Toby, great to see you. Firstly,
great to see you, Rowan.
Firstly, I love your spoof of the ubiquitous British government COVID mantra, the Orwellian stay home, protect the NHS, save lives slogan. You've come up with your own stay sceptical, control the hysteria, save lives. Take us through those three one by one, Toby.
Yeah, well, I'm a great believer in skepticism, particularly when it comes to statements made by our government, particularly Boris Johnson. So I've been quite sceptical about many aspects of the orthodox COVID narrative from the very beginning. I don't think that locking everyone in their homes, the healthy as well as the sick, is the best way to mitigate the impact of this virus. And I believe that long term, that'll do more harm than harm it prevents. At the moment, that's a minority view, a not very popular view, and lots of people who are convinced that lockdowns are the right approach have started attacking and demonizing lockdown skeptics like me and a handful of other journalists and some dissident scientists, claiming that we have contributed to Britain's currently high death toll. We had a record number of deaths in the UK yesterday, and it's nothing to do with the government's ongoing mismanagement of this crisis, nothing to do with having thrown away tens of billions of pounds on a not fit for purpose test and trace program, nothing to do with constantly flipping and flopping about whether we should wear face masks or not, nothing to do with the enormous numbers of people who've died in care homes, nothing to do with in-hospital infections, which the sacred NHS has still not got under control. No, the reason we have high numbers of people dying from COVID-19, according to these critics, is because of pesky skeptics like me, who, by telling people, because we've been telling people lockdowns don't work, the charge is that people have been ignoring the restrictions, and that's contributed to the death toll. In fact, all the evidence suggests that the British population are unusually compliant. They've been terrified out of their wits by this government, and everyone, at least mostly, is complying with the restrictions. So I don't think you can lay the current crisis, the current number of deaths, at the door of skeptics like me.
Quite right. Listen, the extraordinary thing is this idea of protect the NHS, which is there on every kind of platform they get up and speak. There are posters everywhere. Protect the NHS, which seems to be the entire story. This monolith bureaucratic organisation, the NHS, it seems to be all about them and not about actually protecting the population. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, it's a very odd way round, isn't it? You would imagine that our National Health Service, which soaks up hundreds of billions of pounds, is there to protect us. It's not our job to protect the NHS, but because the NHS is a sort of national religion in the UK, because it is considered an almost sacred institution beyond criticism.
Well, you had the beds at the 2012 Olympics. All those strange nurses and beds was your kind of idea. This was the national great spirit. You're right, it is a religion in the UK.
Yeah, seeing those images must have struck some people as pretty odd. I think we must be the only country in the world that worships hospital beds. But the NHS is therefore unimpeachable, beyond criticism. But actually, I think one of the reasons Britain hasn't managed this pandemic particularly well is because the NHS isn't particularly well prepared for it.
Well, you also seem to have this extraordinary bungling around the vaccine, where although Pfizer, I think it is, are saying you've got to take the second booster shot or whatever it is within a few weeks. So the government's saying, oh, no, you can wait months and we'll give it to someone else, and we don't care if we mix up the vaccines, all of which is against the scientific advice. It seems to be an extraordinarily incompetent at every level of health bureaucracy.
Yeah, I think the government's thinking, insofar as I understand it, is that the NHS is under so much pressure because of COVID admissions, particularly in ICU, that it's better to try and vaccinate as many at-risk people as they possibly can. And that means giving as many people as they can the first dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine, but delaying beyond the recommended period, giving them the second dose so they can give the first dose to more and more people. There's been a great deal of debate about this in the press and on the television. Are the government actually, by ignoring the recommended protocols, the protocols that were tested during the vaccine trials, by ignoring the recommendations about how much time you should leave between the two vaccines, are the government actually using the vaccines properly, or are they endangering the people they're vaccinating once and then delaying giving the second dose to? So it has caused a lot of debate here. But I think the reason the government have done this is because the NHS is under such pressure. They just want to do everything they possibly can to prevent it being overwhelmed. From the government's point of view, that is political kryptonite. If we see pictures on the nightly news of people dying in corridors, as we did in Italy at the beginning of the pandemic, the Conservative Party calculates, the Conservative government calculates, that those pictures will be hung around its neck like an albatross by the Labour Party at the next general election. So anything they can do to protect the NHS and prevent that from happening, even if it means completely ignoring the recommendations of the manufacturers of these vaccines about when to give people the doses, they're doing it. They're just desperate to forestall that possibility.